Tucked into the opening chapters of the Hebrew Bible, Genesis 6 presents one of the most heavily contested textual anomalies in ancient Near Eastern literature. In a span of just 4 verses, the text introduces a narrative that lacks internal definition and forces readers to pull the text apart to build their own historical frameworks. The text outlines a specific demographic event. It states that entities identified as the sons of God observed the daughters of men, took them as wives, and produced a generation of offspring. The identity of that offspring is the core of the philological dispute. The original Hebrew text uses the word Nephilim, derived from the root nephal, meaning to fall. But when Greek translators produced the Septuagint in the 3rd century BCE, they rendered the term as gigantes, or giants. This single linguistic pivot redefined the resulting lineage, shifting the definition from a moral category of fallen ones to a physical category of giants. Because the biblical author never explicitly defines who the sons of God or the Nephilim actually are, the verses cannot be understood in a vacuum. To make the narrative function, interpreters have to import external data, projecting their own cultural and historical anxieties directly onto the text. The earliest recorded framework for this event emerged during the Second Temple period, preserved in apocryphal texts like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees. These ancient scholars categorized the sons of God as watchers. These were high-ranking angelic beings who deliberately abandoned their designated domain to breach the celestial-terrestrial boundary. The Enochic literature anchors this cosmic incursion to a specific physical geography, identifying the summit of Mount Hermon as the exact staging ground where these entities descended to Earth. The biological consequence of this unauthorized intermingling was the Nephilim. The text described them as a monstrous race of hybrid offspring whose massive physical size severely disrupted the natural order of early humanity. Within this framework, the Hebrew root nephal is read literally. The Nephilim are the physical descendants of beings who plummeted from the heavenly realm. This paradigm relies on a fully mythic cosmology. By framing the event as an angelic rebellion, it explains how sudden, unmanageable apex violence and corruption were introduced into the early human world. By the 4th century AD, Orthodox Christian theologians like Augustine began systematically overwriting the supernatural mythology of the Watchers. Instead of angels, they re-identified the sons of God as purely human. Specifically, they were the righteous, obedient lineage descended from Adam's Seth. The daughters of men were classified as the opposing human camp, the ungodly, cursed descendants of Cain. According to this model, the tragedy of Genesis 6 was the fatal intermingling of these two isolated populations. The righteous Sethite men married the ungodly Cainite women, resulting in the total corruption and destruction of the holy lineage. Here, the translation of nephal shifts. It no longer refers to a physical descent from the sky, but a moral failure. The Nephilim are simply humans who fell away from God's grace. This framework was driven by theological necessity. Angelic beings lack biological reproduction systems. By removing the supernatural element, the Sethite paradigm solves a philosophical impossibility, placing the blame for the flood's corruption squarely on human shoulders. A third approach removes the theology altogether and aligns the biblical text with regional Mesopotamian historiography. In this sociological lens, the sons of God are identified as human kings or warlords claiming absolute divine status. These rulers exercised power through force. Taking wives of all they chose describes Bronze Age tyrants forcefully conscripting common women for massive royal harems. This aligns precisely with ancient Near East literature. Rulers like Gilgamesh were recorded in state archives as part divine with massive physical stature. In this model, nephal requires a strict military translation, identifying warriors who fall upon others, classifying them as violent oppressors, not fallen angels. This paradigm demythologizes the text. A story about cosmic monsters becomes a grounded socio-political critique of ancient class oppression and the abuses of absolute power. In the 20th century, a fourth interpretation gained traction among ancient astronaut theorists who read these ancient myths strictly through a technological lens. This framework re-identifies the sons of God as extraterrestrial entities, frequently equating them with figures like the Sumerian Anunnaki, who arrived from off-world. The Nephilim are not spiritual hybrids or human tyrants. Instead, they are the direct biological result of advanced genetic engineering performed on early hominids. This theory uses the exact same ancient Near Eastern texts as the royal paradigm, but strips away political context entirely to support a science fiction narrative. It demonstrates the modern urge to rationalize ancient, unexplainable mysteries using contemporary technological concepts, completely severing the text from its original theological and historical intent. Every model follows a strict dependency cascade. The Nephilim's historical profile is a direct consequence of how one identifies the sons of God. This structural ambiguity acts as an anthropological mirror, reflecting the interpreter's anxieties, whether apocalypticism, orthodox purity, anti-tyranny, or science fiction. Despite centuries of continuous debate, the original text refuses to yield a single definitive answer. The ambiguity remains, leaving all four paradigms simultaneously active today. Genesis 6 preserves an ancient memory of a fractured world order. It leaves a permanent linguistic footprint that intentionally defies categorization, forcing humanity to continually confront the mysteries of its own origins.